Living on the outskirts of society, in the wilderness, could seem like a dream. However, within the story of a father and daughter, it is simply a way of life. It can be observed that there was an unstoppable force driving Will, the father, to constantly move and change his routine, even his walking patterns. His daughter Tom trusts his insights and knowledge of how to survive without a second thought. In this trail of breadcrumbs, when we follow their story and understand their way of living, we watch Tom embrace the eventuality of change, whilst Will cannot. There is this learning that although a parent is there for their child, it doesn't mean the child must think like their adult counterpart. This is 2 takes, and this is 1 shot, an analysis of the film Leave No Trace. The aspect of leaving no trace is a hard thing to master. Will and his daughter Tom have developed a sustainable living system whereas everything is used, even when it comes to their food waste that could sustain further growth, such as eggshells in a makeshift garden. Their foraging is meticulous, not grabbing or picking too many, only what they need and never in the same place. When they find something, such as a necklace, Tom is taught to be allowed to take it if no one comes to pick it up. This essentially emphasizes the respect of things she has around her, and understanding that her father, Will, regards things with a thoughtfulness and tenderness when he is in his own environment. When it comes to one's own safety, Will teaches all of the wilderness lessons of survival, such as making a fire, foraging, and being mindful of one's surroundings. However, it goes further, with teaching Tom how to run away and hide in the foliage if they are being traced, using different paths because of their markings of the boots, and more. The sending of Will's medication of PTSD to other homeless people for money for food connects adults to where they are and the subtle hints of his psychosis, especially in auditory format such as the helicopters, and his insistence of constantly moving, almost like he's trying to run away from his own demons, with Tom, in some scenes, struggling to keep up. It's pretty early on in the film that we can understand that Will has PTSD, but what exactly is it? Post-traumatic stress disorder. A distressing disorder where a person who has seen or been in a traumatic event can involuntarily relive the moment in a form of flashbacks, nightmares, images, or distressing physical sensations. If we were to observe Will throughout the film, especially when he has the ironic job cutting down Christmas trees, we can only imagine the loudness of the chainsaw becoming an intense and stressful setting that would lead to the feeling of being on edge. This then led to the fleeing of the first accommodation and the urge of finding solace in a different woodland setting and finding of the cabin. The first thing that could be pointed out is that in certain scenes a seahorse is presented. This is because the seahorse is a classic or poetic word meaning hippocampus, and within the brain, the hippocampus is shaped like a seahorse. PTSD is caused by a blown-out hippocampus, which in turn is caused by an overstimulated amygdala, the organ that produces terror. In a healthy brain, the hippocampus double-checks the source of an alarm and switches off the amygdala if not judged urgent. This is nearly instantaneous, so that when the person may not be aware of a terror prompt has occurred before the hippocampus cancels it. In PTSD sufferers, the hippocampus has been burned out by one or more intensely traumatic events, so the amygdala keeps pumping terror prompts into the neural system over and over with little or no interference. Hence the experience of flashbacks, sudden irrational terror originating from a trigger sensed by the amygdala but possibly not even known to the victim. Therefore, the seahorse is a recurring theme that represents Will's disorder. But what I've noticed is that within the film, the explanation does go deeper if you catch it. There is the article that Tom discovers in their important papers that has the headline, "A unit stalked by suicide, trying to save itself." Although Tom will only get to see the beginning of the article, it gave the impression of many things. As it stands, with that kind of title, we can only assume that her father was in the Battleton and is struggling, or that her father can relate the article to the struggle of his disorder. Will relates to this article deeming it to be important because of what kind of message it represents. And if one would go onto the internet and read the whole thing, it gives a more informal view of how these veterans have struggled with depression and PTSD with impressive statistics and in-depth interviews. It shows how they have desperately sought help with the US Veterans Affairs Department and found either ineffective therapy, being overloaded with drugs, or a waiting period for some to be years before ever being seen. This article that presents the idea of fear within suicide actually emphasises the ineffectiveness of therapy within society of veterans, and how those affected have found effective treatments by helping each other and getting involved in things such as organic farming. And so, from a point of view, after understanding what the article's message, I feel Will keeps this to remind himself that yes, depression and suicide is a major factor for others, and himself, that suffer PTSD, also to emphasise his closed case judgment of how society is not helping. Therefore, he chooses nature as a form of therapy. But remember, this article and its findings is always open for discussion, and what I have said is simply a theory at this point. And then there is avoidance and emotional numbing. Everything not concerning Tom, his daughter, he is numb to, and this can explain his lack of necessity of eating and shelter, almost as if it weren't for Tom, he would just continue walking to an unknown destination. Will also has a habit of not really answering questions about himself. A prime example is the first question that Tom asks her father, what was his favourite colour, to which he asks what her favourite colour is. Will does not like to talk about himself, and what is even more stressful is that this is more pronounced in the vocal questionnaire that he was forced to do whilst Tom was elsewhere being questioned. When he was filling out a vocal questionnaire, it is asking things such as, do you have difficulty enjoying things? Have you felt distant or cut off from people? Are you unable to have sad or loving feelings? With only a 3-second slot of a response until a dramatic loud beep ensures the next question, has Will struggling to keep up. Eventually we find him, his head in his hands, the headset off, and the man attempting to sympathise with him. Then the man begins another round of questions, letting Will have a time to think and answer. And what was interesting was the next question about whether or not Will was proud of his daughter, and without hesitation, he responds yes. The questionnaire felt like an inhumane experience, an analysis based on the person's answers that were determined through data, and through only yes and no answers, I might add, their diagnosis. This is the complete opposite of what Tom got. She got to speak to a person, them asking her questions, and for Tom to respond the way she felt. This places two things in motion, that Will was not getting the help he should be getting, and it was unwanted, and Tom was getting the help without wanting it, though subconsciously needing it. There's many attempts of kindness that circulate around Will and Tom as they wander through the woods and essentially try to keep themselves. And even though they ran away from the makeshift help from the government, other discoveries such as the cabin in the woods that gave them shelter, and then the RV park that gave them time and shelter, set up the space for Will to be still and recover, and for Tom to wander and grow. The more Tom set about talking and listening and observing those around her, the more she understood that the only barrier she was setting up was around themselves. And then when it came to the moment of realisation of having the time away from her father, as he was asleep resting his broken leg, she had time to reflect on what she thought was good and true. And the life that she had led, though not the same course of action as most of the people she has met, she can understand that she can make a life with the help of people around her, and how she can reciprocate the kindness with her own form in turn. And although we understand that Tom is not like other girls, with a scene clearly explaining the difference when two other girls are making dream boards and wanting physical things, we can understand Tom's strong optimism in the face of the two girls who did not believe in their families coming to get them. Tom has an unwavering self-belief and a wide-eyed honesty that makes us realise that she is not as naive and young as we had initially thought. Tom essentially tries to take matters into her own hands, when she gives the woman who owns the RV money so she can rent it and stay, giving herself and her father some permanence in their temporary sheltered living. We see here that, without asking her father, Tom wanted to make a stand, to make her father stay still, to perhaps reflect like she did, to fight for the place in the community that she feels close to. The aspect of the bees sensing Tom as one of their own, whilst Will looks on under the protection of the suit, shows how much further Tom has gotten in terms of letting people in. As Alexander and Strump 7555 on Reddit writes, it's so symbolic of how the two characters progress through the film. Tom is accepted by the Hive. She has learned to value community. Her father, on the other hand, keeps his protective gear on. He can't bear to open himself up to others apart from his daughter. Additionally, Tom now teaches her father new things, whereas in the beginning of the film he was teaching her everything. Her dependence on him is slowly subsiding, such as subtle scenes portraying Tom's growth and coming of age. She can let the warmth of the Hive fill her, assuring her father that he doesn't need to be scared, that they can both teach each other things now that they are on equal grounds. From this scene, Tom makes a subtle stand, slowly pushing her father away, with the knowledge that what's wrong with him isn't wrong with her. She must break free, but not break her bond with Will. And it's a difficult thing to do, but the division of barriers heartbreakingly shows a shift of reliance. Tom still loves her father, but she does not follow him anymore. She has become her own person, and Will, even before, back in the woods, knew this day would come. Leave No Trace, a distinguished title that almost sounds like a demand or plea of sorts. It could perhaps emphasise the difference between Will and Tom's lack of reliance of the societal norm, and their living could be continued by this rule. But leaving no trace can also mean many things in different contexts. At the beginning of the film, there is this unwavering us against them dynamic between Tom and Will and the outside world. They are in their own little bubble, quite literally leaving no room for anyone else. Their lifestyle and the way they live has been distancing themselves so much that they lack connections with anyone else besides each other. Leaving a trace, something at least, would have an opening for others to venture into, and by the end, it is apparent that Tom and Will's tiny bubble expands because of the many people that come and go. But because of these interactions, they also separate into two bubbles, into two different people. Will is stuck in the past, and Tom is venturing towards the future, finally understanding that she cannot shelter her father anymore, that her journey is only just beginning, and if she stayed still with Will, she would only stagnate. It is a bittersweet ending of Tom growing up and wanting to explore outside of her father's protection, understanding that there are many good people that are outside of their bubble that she can befriend and learn from. Will lets her go, knowing deep down that his love for her is always there, and that she knows this. She knows her father loves her, and that her only hope for him is that he comes back to visit, and for him to understand that he has a friend if he needs help. Thus, even Will, without knowing it, leaves a trace with Tom. What are your thoughts on what was discussed in this episode? Comment and let me know to open up a conversation. Like and subscribe for more content of this nature, and come talk to me on Twitter or Instagram. Better yet, support the show on my Patreon to help a creator such as myself with learning on the go. Each like, each comment, each subscriber fuels the motivation I need to make better and better content for yours truly. Come say hi, and thanks for watching.